Good morning. What's up, everyone? It's Ing, and we're here for today's Praise You chat. Today is my friend Sarah Galender Meyer, and she is the gallery director at Creative Growth out in Oakland. And we're going to wait for a few more people to come on. Hey, Stacy, how are you? We're going to wait for a few more people to come on and, again, get started with her. But Creative Growth is an amazing organization that I see you, Sarah. We'll put you on in a minute. So I was just telling folks a little bit about Creative Growth, but you know what? Now that you're on, I'll wait for you to do that. And for those of you who are joining for the first time, this is the Praise You chats that I've been having daily since mid-April. And next week will be my last week because I need to move on with my life. And this has been great and wonderful, but I am going to be transitioning to some other platforms, and I hope you guys will check that out as well. So today we're going to talk to Sarah Galender Meyer, who is my friend out in Oakland or in the Bay Area, and she's the gallery director at Creative Growth. And I will put you on. Get started. How about my flyaways? How's everyone doing today? Give me a wave. Hi.
Hi.
How are you, my love?
All right. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, just fed the family, and then I ran to come do this thing. Yeah. It's so good to see you. How is life out in the Bay Area?
It's okay. In terms of coronavirus, our numbers have been really low here. Everybody's still following the protocols, but there is talk about opening some things up. Yeah, but everybody's anxious and nervous,
Okay. Well, I'm just really happy to see you. I haven't really talked to you in a while, and I think you were in New York a couple months ago. Was that right? But we missed Armory Week.
Yeah, and right before everything shut down.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You know what? I poured myself a cup of ice, and I forgot to put my beverage in it. I hope you're having better luck than me today. What are you drinking?
I've got a cappuccino and a water.
Okay.
I'm ready. Yeah.
Clearly I'm not. So can you tell folks a little bit about Creative Growth?
Sure. It's an art studio and gallery for adults with disabilities in Oakland, California. And it's been around since the 70s. It's about 45 years old now. And it was sort of the oldest and largest organization of its kind. So it really was a trailblazer in terms of introducing artists with disabilities into the contemporary art world.
Wow. Yeah. And how does Creative Growth define disabilities?
Right. The artists that come are primarily developmental disabilities.
Okay. But do you have some with physical handicaps, or is that?
Yeah, a combination. Usually,
okay.
It's primarily developmental, and a few of our artists have strictly mental disabilities, but it's primarily developmental.
And so for you, what is your job there as gallery director?
So I'm in charge of all the artwork after it comes out of the studio, and there are about 150 artists, so there's a lot of artwork that is produced. So I'm in charge of, and my team. I have a really great team. We organize it. We send it out for exhibitions at other galleries and to museums if they're exhibiting their work as well. We have gallery shows in our space in Oakland and selling to collectors and, anybody that wants to do artwork.
And you guys have joined or have been part of the art world art fair circuit as well. I've seen you.
Yeah, for a long time. We started sort of doing the outsider art fairs fairly early on. And then in the past 6-7 years, we've started going to more contemporary art fairs.
Right. So you guys were you at NADA one year? I feel like that was 1 year where I saw you.
NADA Miami. And we've started Art Paris. And we just did Felix in LA, which was amazing.
Okay. Oh, wow. So for those who might not be as familiar with the mission or the work of creative growth. How does it work if an artist is a part of your organization? Do they physically go into the studio and have one-on-ones with facilitators to create artworks?
Yeah, there's not a lot of one-on-one, but the artists come to Creative Growth. There are sort of morning, we call them classes, but they're not really classes, so there's a morning session and an afternoon session, and it's sort of by media. So, you can do ceramics or painting and drawing or textiles. There's a wood shop. So there's a variety of different things. It sort of depends on what the artist wants to work on. And the instructors really are facilitators. There's no like art instruction.
Right.
Sometimes, the instructors are professional artists themselves, so they will, in terms of technique and the brushes and things like that, they'll help with. But we have a really hands-off philosophy, because the idea is to really let the artists sort of find their own path artistically.
Right. I've never been to Creative Growth in Oakland, but I've loved seeing your booths and seeing, some of these really monumental works of art get like prime space and visibility in these art fairs. As over the last few years, outsider art has become more of a trend, more popular. It's still really amazing to see the artists from Creative Growth not prosper in that way, but flourish and be able to achieve some great prices for artworks. Tell me a little bit more about how you've developed their careers or their sales through the art fairs.
I really have to thank Tom DiMaria was the director of Creative Growth for a really long time, who really sort of paved that path. And so I feel like my job is really to ride that momentum and keep pushing and growing in that way. But he really developed the careers of like Dan Miller and William Scott, and he got that going. And pricing is tricky. I think unless an artist is sort of really embraced by the contemporary art world, the majority of our artists' work are low for contemporary artists.
When you say low, you mean like a few $100s or a few $1,000s,
right? Like $500 for something that otherwise could be $3,000 or $4,000, which I think would be comparable. But that's also a way like we sell a lot of work. Like, there are some benefits to that also. But there's a lot of prejudice in the gallery and contemporary art world that we fight against all the time. Tell
me more about that. What do you mean by prejudice towards your organization?
That an artist with a developmental disability just isn't quite as valuable as somebody who's been to art school. And I can't say that's across the board. Really, there are so many people in the design and art world that recognize how amazing the artwork is, and the quality and the caliber of the artwork is truly really great and ride on that. But there's still, in the contemporary art world,
Wait, are you saying that the contemporary art world is snobbish?
Maybe.
Come on, let's be real. There are so many people who consider themselves gatekeepers of what is considered good art or real art. And I love when Creative Growth comes around each time, because, someone may not know that the artist behind this work has a disability of some kind. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of expressions once you reveal that information.
Yeah, that's why I really love working contemporary art fairs, almost better than outside art fairs, because, people have no idea, and they'll come up and say, this is my favorite booth, or like, what is going on here? It's very affirming to see that kind of reaction to people, to the artwork itself, not based on any knowledge about it. And then, I have received some shocking responses when I tell them, where this artwork is coming from and who made the artwork, that are egregious and awful. But a lot of people embrace it. They're like, wow, that's kind of amazing. And a lot of like contemporary artists themselves are always totally blown away and really supportive and impressed.
Right.
They buy a lot of our artists' work.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we had a question from Ilona in Boston who asked how you're funded. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It's three funding streams. We are a nonprofit organization, so we have three funding streams. It's sales, it's contributions, and then we receive some support from the state, from the regional center is what it is here in California, because we are a licensed day program for people with disabilities.
I see. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift a little bit to what life is right now during the pandemic for you, but also for the organization. As the gallery director, clearly the gallery is not open. So talk to me about that step that you had to take to prepare for the shutdown.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of time to prepare, and actually we were between shows, so we didn't even have a chance to install the next show, which we were so excited about. I mean, really, the heartbreaking thing is that there were like 5 amazing shows that were going to happen in the spring and summer. So, the walls are empty. So we didn't, there was a very short time period, but very quickly we sort of shifted gear to like really have that online cultivation, so people didn't forget who we are. Really get the artwork, to keep like showing the artwork and telling the artist stories. So we've become this.
So you're shifting online entirely.
We are.
Everything.
We are. and that's different for us. I mean, we're a nonprofit, not like a struggling, meager nonprofit, but the whole tech sphere wasn't really what we did. So it was a quick turnaround, and going back to like our marketing business school days, to draw from, but then also it's like a whole new landscape now. So we're really shifting gears, and, I feel really lucky. The people on my team are amazing, and
that's good. Yeah.
Present at least.
Right. And how about the artists who had depended on Creative Growth as a place to go? What are they doing now?
They are at home. Some live with their families, some live in group homes, and they're okay. I mean, everybody's healthy. Nobody's been hit with COVID, but it's not great. I mean, Creative Growth was really like home for a lot of our artists, and really relied on that routine and those relationships and the community. So it's been hard, but, part of shifting online is also being able to, have Zoom like meetings and classes, and, we're checking in on them every day. So just to maintain that kind of connection, so we don't lose them in a sense.
Right. So they are being provided with information on creating at home.
Yeah. Yes. We've made some delivery drops of art supplies, and there are classes every day that you can tap into, and it's okay. I think nobody feels totally satisfied with that, because it's not the way that a lot of these artists are used to working, and it's more prescriptive, and for like figure drawing, I think is great, but it's something that a lot of our artists like didn't do, but it's something that we can do, through a Zoom call. So it's interesting, in terms of the artwork itself.
Yeah. And how have the artists responded? Are they kind of participating each and every time, or are you finding it hard to keep the motivation up?
No, excitement is there. It's a matter of like making sure they have the technology and know how to use the technology. That took a while. And some of our instructors too, like just figuring that out. But it's growing. Everybody's really excited. They're excited to see each other. Which is nice.
Yeah, they must miss each other. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, the community is such an essential component of Creative Growth.
Right.
And to have to do it through technology, it's just not the same. It's like our children not loving homeschool because they can't. The social aspect of school is so important for young kids and older kids. Yes. So there was also a question about, how how you see this pivot right now for creative growth. And I know your realm is really the gallery, and there are other people who are dealing, with other aspects of the organization. So I know you can't speak for everybody, but for your job and your role, now that art fairs are indefinite and opening the physical space, I assume in California is indefinite unless you guys have information that I don't have. No one really knows when this is happening.
Right.
How are you projecting the next few months, or even the next 6 months to a year?
I don't know. I think I feel a bit oddly optimistic because I'm not generally an optimistic person, and I think one thing, we're discussing ways that we can sort of for the next fiscal year, really be engaged a little bit more in the online realm in terms of like sales and exhibitions and things like that. I'm hopeful that in September something will shift. What my plan is right now, what I'd like to do is install a show, and in September starts like scheduling viewings for people to come in, because I think the artwork reads online. I think it's fine, but I do feel like there's something about the experience of seeing something in person and also being in creative growth space that is hard to replicate. Although we will try. Everybody's trying to do that, but that's my hope, is that we will open.
So September.
Yeah.
Not any time before then. Not the summer at all.
I don't know. I don't know if that's realistic. From what I'm hearing. But, I would like to start, as soon as people start feeling more comfortable, I would start I want to do some viewings, a lot of cultivation with collectors that can be done, and, just on more of an individual basis. So we can do that. But in terms of like the next exhibition in our space, September. And in terms of the other shows, God, we just had an amazing lineup for the spring and summer that are getting pushed back. There's one that's pretty certain for September in New York. That would, that'll be nice. But I hope I can travel to go. I hope that the artists can travel to go to that opening. That people in New York go to that opening, It's really hard to know.
So many questions right now. Well, for those who have just joined us, this is Sarah Galender Meyer from Creative Growth in the Bay Area. You don't live in Oakland, but Creative Growth is based in Oakland.
Yeah.
And Creative Growth has, really, for me, I think it's helped me open my perspective on who an artist is. But there's no denying that, artists who come through creative growth have been through insurmountable obstacles, and, to just be seen as like a human first and foremost. So how has this pandemic affected them just on a human level, do you think? And is that something that you guys are working on and dealing with aside from all the art that you're teaching and facilitating?
Yeah. I mean, I think the instructors that are leading the Zoom classes are sort of on the front lines of that. And certainly there was an incident last week where something came out during one of the classes that was immediately, like they just don't have that outlet or somebody to talk to where they once did. And it's hard. And, there have been incidents in the past where like creative growth, it is sort of on the lookout for any forms of abuse. I mean, all those things. We're not a social service organization, but there are some elements.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just, there was a conversation I had on a chat last week with my friend Sarah Feingold, who is an attorney, but she's very focused right now on like, women in the workplace, women in leadership. And there was the concern that right now with so many women taking on the brunt of stay-at-home issues and homeschooling, a lot of women, especially in academia, as there have been anecdotal evidence, have taken a step back voluntarily. So there's this concern that women are not going to be, there's going to be a little bit of a stagnation in how we are trying to, create a movement. And I think about this for all people in this country who are not white male, basically not the patriarchy, people with disabilities, people of color, anyone who isn't basically the president and his friends. There's just going to be such a lack of resources for everybody. But, I guess this brings me to one of my questions concerning resources is that I assume your job is the earned income component of creative growth, right? You're there to create more revenues so that the organization can continue to thrive, and you're an essential part of it. But with the market as it is now, how do you predict or how do you forecast that in the future? Are you forecasting a dip for the next fiscal year?
I am forecasting a dip, but not a big dip. Again, maybe this is a sort of like dumb optimistic thing, but since shelter in place across the country, our sales decreased initially, like in those first couple of weeks, when everybody is trying to figure out how to be at home. But and we missed some sales from the shows, in our gallery, and then those extra shows as well. But otherwise, like, people are still buying, and in terms of like the higher price work and those more established artists. And I think, and I'm hearing this from other galleries too, is that at least for right now, people who have money, who like to buy art, are still have money and are still buying art. So I'm hoping that sort of continues, but I do, there are some things that will decrease for sure. Like if we aren't able to go to art fairs, if the art fairs don't happen, or if people aren't willing to travel, that's going to take a hit. And
at the same time, you won't be spending the money renting the booths, building the booths, and sending your staff. Sure.
Yes. I mean, I think we've been, Creative Growth has always been really lucky at art fairs. We've
got a discount.
Done really well. It's not even a break-even situation. We've always done well. But yes, there's less overhead in some ways. But I think the advantage of being a nonprofit is that, not that contributions are in less danger, but we recently hired a really amazing development director, so there's some buffer, and we can sort of work together and help each other out in some ways. But yes, we're budgeting for the next fiscal year right now, and I put in a much lower number than
Wow. I mean, okay, so we have 7 minutes left. If anyone has questions for Sarah, please put them in. We actually have one from Joshik. She's the question is, can you tell us more about your collectors? Who are they? Do they collect insider art as well? Is there a marked difference between inside and outside art collecting, or expectations, or art education, or art education background?
Our collectors are across the board. We have a lot of collectors who pride themselves on both contemporary and outsider art. We have the dedicated outsider art collectors. And it happens at different tiers too. Creative Growth has been around for a really long time, so there's also like the loyal Creative Growth collectors who might not have the Dan Millers, but who have a lot of work, who purchased a lot of work over the years. It really is across the board, and we're really lucky. Creative Growth has been in the media a lot, so we get a lot of attention from like celebrities and very fancy, people, which is nice. It's nice to touch with them, and it's nice that they buy our artwork. Not just celebrities, like a lot of museum curators. Are major supporters of our artists and our work and our organization. So we're lucky to have a nice broad spectrum of collectors.
Absolutely. And do they also, is the spectrum across the United States as well, or across the world?
Yeah, it's international. Yeah. Creative Growth used to have a gallery in Paris. So through that, Creative Growth established a nice sort of collector base there, which still happens, which is why we do 2 fairs a year, or used to do 2 fairs a year over there, and still make sales during that time.
Paris, that makes so much sense. Well, is there anything that you would like us to know about creative growth or the work that you're planning ahead that we should all look out for?
Oh my gosh. Look for us online.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how's your staff dealing with the online? Because it's like as if, whoever was doing online stuff has now so much more work than he or she used to. Are you guys looking to add more like not benefits, but like facilitate that in a way so that you have more resources for online?
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out right now. And luckily, the gallery team is really small. There's 3 of us. And I feel so lucky because the 2 people that work in the gallery are so great. They're younger, they're millennials, all the technology stuff, particularly one of them, it's like dreams do come true, in terms of where we will probably not have to hire out for additional resources to do those extra sort of technological things. I don't know. We'll know more shortly, but they're really dedicated and loyal, and their skills are really varied. So that's good.
So you already have the team. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what's hard for some either galleries or institutions that maybe have like one social media person, right? And that person is now taking on so much of the work. And it's hard. It's really hard to, there's so many resources out there, and just kind of wading through the muck is like a full-time job in itself right now. But I guess I have like a really philosophical question, and this is as we look into the art world after the pandemic is over. Mm-hmm. What would you like to see happen? If there are any structural changes, any ideological changes that you felt in your heart through working at Creative Growth that needed to change, and maybe now it's a good time for some sort of reset?
Sure. Well, obviously, it's always important for people to become more sensitive and humanistic, in terms of their perceptions of people with disabilities, and really understanding their potential. I think for this group that's been so marginalized, people aren't around people with disabilities that often, and they're so underestimated, and they're so great and smart and innovative. I hope that we can find a way for, the larger public to really understand and see how smart and amazing and capable they are. You know? And I think that's something else that we have been talking about. That's been trending lately is it's not just us representing them. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for them to really speak for themselves and represent themselves. So
that's powerful.
Keep pushing in that direction.
Amazing. And what have you been doing for yourself, my dear? Busy mother and, nonprofit exec. What are you doing?
Not much for myself, but I will say one of the few things that brings happiness to my days is Ryan Heffington's dance class.
You're the second person who's mentioned that on this chat. That's so cool.
Really important to me. I mean, it's just so good to have that space to let loose and dance. And, I think, because of my...
Well, you're a dancer. Yeah, your background is in dance.
I'm a big believer in rhythm and, driving beats. And I feel particularly right now when everything is so certain, just that driving beat is so important. And understanding structure, I think, is really good for people's bodies. And,
I agree. I love it. And lastly, what is that work of art behind you?
This is a piece by William Scott, who is a creative growth artist. And he, I guess Jesus' head is being cut off. But, he's an artist that was going to have a really great show in New York. This is the show that's slated for September now. He's one of our more established artists. He's in the permanent collection at the MoMA and the Student Museum of Harlem and SF MoMA. And
is that a painting or is that a print?
It's a painting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this is sort of an outlier.
Okay.
Because he sort of revisits specific genres. It's related to one of his utopian genres of people in spaceships bringing peace to the earth. And these are like the power players in that scenario. So,
what does it say? Just quickly, what does some of it say?
Barack Obama and Jesus of Peace is what's above, and at the top it says, which you can't see, Lord in Peace of reunited the 20th century as peace, and then Future of Peace, 20th century. It's about them having the power to bring peace to the earth. He has these very utopian sort of ideas and visions, and he's working that out in his paintings. And also,
beautiful.
Who doesn't love Jesus and Obama?
No, it's beautiful. I'm so glad you sat in front of it for our chat because I've been wanting to ask you about it. Yeah. So we're out of time, which is always such a bummer because these things go by really fast, and I love talking to my friends, and I'm just really impressed and proud of the work you're doing at Creative Growth. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me. This is amazing.
Of course. But somebody did ask if you could provide, let me see if I can scroll. Are there any texts, and don't tell me this now, maybe what you can do is email me and I'll share it.
Okay.
Are there any texts or resources you'd suggest to people on the history of outsider art or current trends?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I guess just, resources or things that you think people would be interested in reading in the context of creative growth.
Sure.
Yeah, send me a list and I'll put it up on my stories. And this will be up on the stories for 24 hours, so everyone can check that out. And then I'll archive it on YouTube. And thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care of yourself out there, and I'll see everyone tomorrow. Okay, bye.
Bye.